And so we are recording. Good day, everyone. The Division of Virgin Islands Cultural Education is strongly emphasizing the subjects surrounding post-emancipation themes to the title 2023 March Virgin Islands History Month, Emancipation Now, Understanding History, Living the Legacy, and Creating a Just Future for All Are We. As many already know, this year marks the 175th anniversary of the Emancipation Revolt in the Virgin Islands in 1848, and the conversations about our legacy post-emancipation. These lectures and activities will give teachers and students a greater awareness of a richer understanding of current issues and historical events regarding the 1848 Acts of Equity and its impact on our present experiences. In alignment with honoring Emancipation and Black History Month, today's presenter, Professor Olassie Davis, leads this morning's presentation entitled Hardships of the Maroons in the Danish West Indies. Most people already may be familiar with Mr. Davis's work as an environmentalist, historian, and cultural steward, as well as a preservationist. Professor Davis was born on the island of St. Thomas, but resides on the island of St. Croix, where he currently maintains his academic and professional life. It was in 1998 that he helped start the St. Croix Hiking Association. Since then, he has become synonymous with environmental activism and cultural and natural history on the island. At the St. Croix campus of the University of the Virgin Islands, he works as an assistant professor and extension specialist. Mr. Davis leads numerous groups of students, teachers, and preservationists on hikes into sacred lands where he relates the history of each space. He currently advocates to draw attention to the national level of environmental tragedy of the loss of the Crouse Lagoon, the largest wetland in the Virgin Islands, to industrial development. Davis boldly stated, when it comes to the refinery always gets its way in a post by the Washington Post. Davis proclaimed that vast population on the continental U.S. that the incident proclaiming that the Virgin Islands is part of the conversation on preserving Black historical spaces and raising awareness on the ecological degradation in Black and Brown communities. At this time, help me in presenting to you Mr. Professor Olassie Davis. Mr. Davis?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning. Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. I just want to thank Ms. Stephanie Brown for the invitation. And just like to mention to not just in the Virgin Islands, I teach classes in Denmark online, and I encounter folks from all over the world doing research. I have two students just graduated from Europe, and they came here for about probably 7 weeks doing the master in watershed. So I get content from all over the world every day in terms of the environment and the cultural resources here in the island. And of course, I write for the Online, for the Daily News, Online, and other paper. This morning, we're talking about the Maroons, who are these individuals and how they play a part in our history and the struggle that they been through. Throughout the Caribbean, there was Maroons as well in North America and South America, even from Africa when it was captured and brought to this part of the world. The presentation, before I begin, I will read a small disclaimer, and it said the extension program and policies are consistent with federal and state laws and regulation on non-discrimination regarding race, color, national origin, religion, gender, and age, disability, we have to say that since the University of Orleans is a land grant institution, and then the School of Agriculture and is federal, so anytime do presentation, we have to say that. So now let me go into the presentation. I will hit slide and then hit beginning. Can you see it? There you go. Okay, let me. We start with the Caribbean islands, and you can see the Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, Central America, and a little part of North America. So this morning, my discussion will be in the U.S. Virgin Islands, former Danish West Indies. Before Columbus came here in 1493, in November, there were Africans already in the Caribbean, Africans already in the United States, and Africans already in South America. A good example is St. Thomas. I was still in high school in 1976 at Hull Bay. While Wapper was digging a pole, they discovered two bodies, and the Smithsonian came in and analyzed the body, and there were two Africans going back to 12 AD. Columbus was here in 14 AD. And it's African also in Central and South America going back to 5,000 years. So if you go online today and put in the came before Columbus and other things, you'll find a lot of information. So in school, when I grew up, in the boys now, we were taught about Columbus coming this part of the world and discover, and of course, you know, he didn't discover it for his people or what's not. So I just wanted to make it clear that were African in the United States for 5,000 years. These are the kind of thing we have been taught about in our school. And you know, today now there's a lot of issues, especially in Florida, talking about history, particularly African American history, and what to be teaching school and not to be teaching school. So this map gives you an idea of the West Indies, and you can see Puerto Rico right next door to it, and we are connected a lot to Puerto Rico historically, not just with enslaved Africans, but we are connected also in terms of the indigenous people that migrate to Puerto Rico, coming from Central and South America. As you know, one of the first thing, Denmark, when they got here, they were one of the last European, 1671, they were latecomers. This part of the world, it was the French, not the French, but excuse me, the Spanish, they dominate, they had a monopoly on this part of the world, from especially for the Caribbean, South, Central America. And then later on, you get other European countries came, like the French and the Dutch, and then later on, you had the Danish. Like back in the late 1800s, oil became a major commodity. During the 1600s and going further back, sugarcane became a major commodity as well. And in this drawing, you could see where the enslaved are cutting the cane. But in the Danish West Indies, it wasn't cane until later on, it was cotton. Cotton gave away to the sugarcane industry in the Danish West Indies. And of course, if you read a little bit of St. Thomas history, when Denmark came here and they acquire St. Thomas, the first thing we're going to do is clear the land and we're going to plant cotton. And then later on, they realized that the topography of the islands was very difficult. And then it became one of the best harbor in the world. In the late 1700s, it became a free port. And of course, from there, they went out to St. John. And then later on, in 1733, it was ported. But sugarcane, especially St. Croix, became a major, major commodity. Until St. Croix was the fourth in the world in producing sugar. That's when she was at the highest speed. So this island, they impact Europe and make Denmark rich by off the back of enslaved people. Here now, does the maroon, what it mean? And it got different definition about maroons. One definition mentioned meaning runaway slaves, savage, wild, and tame. Other definitions say they are called maroon negro because they live in the bush like apes, or T maroon said to mean ape. Maroon is a Taino word meaning wild or untamed. So basically maroon, if you're enslaved African, not slave, but enslaved African, and you run away during that time, they call them maroons. In the South America, they call them bush negroes in South America. So maroon basically is someone that run away, they call them maroons. This is a drawing with the maroons. They were fearful fighters throughout the Caribbean, North and Central America, and in Africa. I will read a small part here from a book, The Dominican Stories, and this is about the Maroons. And it said, the list given the final account of the climate of the Maroons conflict between February and November 1814. Make a chilling reading. Maroon killed in the forest, 50 men and 3 women. Those captured in the forest and jail, 109 men, 11 women, 68 children. Maroon who surrendered 6 men and 1 woman. Slave taken the jail for looting off the plantation to which they belong without passage, 100 men, 48 women, 5 children. Those who surrendered and were pardoned and returned their owner, 75 men, to the 1 woman, 5 children. Slaves who surrendered direct to their owner, 100. The total direct involved were 577. Of the above number, 11 were hung and the head cut off, exposed and pulled at various places around the island. The 2 others were sentenced to hang but died in jail. 14 received lashes ranging from 100 to 30 strokes each. Of these, 1 died following his punishment. 7 others were sentenced to work in chain for 3 months. The Maroon force never recovered from the event of the mid-1814. The camp had been broken. The respective leaders would die, but the tide was turning. The slave trade had been abolished, and whether the planters like it or not, emancipation seemed not far off. This happened in Dominica, and it happened in the Danish West Indies. When I was in Jamaica in 2009 and 2019, which is recently, we went to the Maroon. In Jamaica, the only island in the Caribbean where the Maroon, they fought the English for X amount of years and have treaties because of the topography. And so they have 2 societies in Jamaica. You got the Maroon Society and you have the Jamaican as a whole society. And they still govern themselves going back for more than 300 years ago. So they were the last set of Maroons that fought and they got their freedom from the British. Now, before some slave African turned Maroons in the Danish West Indies and other Caribbean islands, traveling from West Africa coast, many slaves took their own life. Other slaves jumped overboard from slave ship, while others starved themselves to death. Remember now, we're talking about the hardship of Maroons. Taking a look, the Danish involvement in the transatlantic slave trade, they were brutal to the slave. One of the most brutal cases of punishment for slaves took place in 1709. I basically summarize it for you. The leader of that revolt had the hand cut off and shot to every slave on the ship. The next day, his left hand was cut off, and it was, display. The 3rd day, the man's hair was cut off. And then for the next 2 days, to have it on display, wrote Hugh Thomas, who was a captain of the ship. This what took place before they even get to the Danish West Indies. Now, this is a Danish map of St. Croix, 1767. What you're seeing here with the circles, that's letting you know the indication where Maroon was and where they escaped. If you noted the north, what the St. Croix, that's the area trying to protect for more than 30 years, which you'll see later on, go a little more detail. You see Sandy Point area there, you see the tongues, Philippa and Christiansted, you see Spring Bay, and then out in the east end of the island, you see the long circle. This area was temporary Maroon area, but it was the northwest of the island we call Maroon Bob by the Davis Mill Hill and Mountain was extremely difficult to get to. Maroon also come down in tongues as well and they mingle with the folks there and you couldn't tell the difference. So we kind of went to that later on. You could just see this is a map of St. Croix back in 1767, an old Danish map. In this here, you see, I from all over the world, I'm a professor for other students from other parts of the United States, other parts of the world. These students come from Winona State University in the US, and we here at Maroon Ridge giving a lecture, and you could see part of the Maroon, you could see the pool of the bats. This is the particular area we're talking about for many years trying to protect. And you see some folks in the water there. This is 1 or 12 bat. This is Whale Bay. This become very popular now with people going to that particular area. This is Maroon country. People are enslaved, hide in caves along in the mountain area. Get a closer look. You could see there in the pool and extremely pretty area. There's no place in the Voyage Island like this. No place in St. John, St. Thomas, none in the Keys. It's pretty unique area in the Voyage Island history, and it's still basically untouched. And they have pre-colonial site in the area. It got slave grave. Those teachers for VI history next month, we'll be going to one of the largest slave grave in the Voyage Islands, where you can see the graves. And you will learn about George Washington, who was a slave man in 1836, and he died March 9th, 1887. He died a year before my grandmother in St. John, who was Small, Catherine Small. She born in St. John in 1888. And so it's a unique, difficult place to get. This place here, I carry thousands and thousands of students here in the Voyage Island, particularly in St. Croix. They explore this from 4th grade up. They got different parts of the area. You can hike and you're seeing stuff like this, plants and you're seeing animals. Extremely pretty sight to see. Now I'll be playing a YouTube. This is Maroon country. Look how pretty it is. And that's on St. Croix. A place they're trying to protect for over 30 years. Very history. This area is Annie Bay. We have Annie Bay, we got Whale Bay, we got Annie North, we got Sweet Bottom Bay, and we got Wilkes Bay. It's about 5 or 6 bays in the area. where you're walking on St. Croix is not volcanic, but St. Croix is a coral impact by volcanic activity. This is Maroon country, the roughest part of St. Croix. So when you see when you walk on top, there is like a coral. About 20 million years ago, it pushed up from the ocean floor. St. Croix was 2 islands and come together 20 million years ago as 1 island. But we don't have volcanic rock. That's only the Bay Pool there. It is deepest, about between 12 to 14 feet deep, and there's a cave underneath it. So you get an understanding of how your ancestors live. They live in rugged areas of the Danish West Indies, places that hard to get to. So this is one of the areas where they have caves. The cave still exists today, where they hide inside these caves. And then from this area too, they migrated to Puerto Rico and elsewhere and throughout the Caribbean regions. You can hear the water crashing against the coastal area. Is a gorgeous, beautiful area. And for teachers and St. Croix, over the years, I get called and we hike in these particular areas. You can see the gentleman now, he's inside the pool. This one in the pool is the largest pool. We have many pools in the Northwest. This is part of Maroon when we slaves used to swim and hide. So it's a pretty unique area to protect. So what you saw on the map, that's the island itself. That's the place. Way to the end is the lighthouse, historical lighthouse built by the Danish government. You can see it right to the tip. It goes from over 300 feet or almost 1,000 feet. Now, this is on the east end of the area, the rugged hills. This is our temporary area part Maroon live. Now this area is protected, both on the south and the northern part of the island. We fought for so many years to protect this area, and now it's protected. And this is one of the most photo areas in St. Croix in terms of the tourist industry when advertise our home. They use this, it's just ironic to see how a couple years ago, they're going to do development in this particular area. We found that, and now it's protected, and now it's being used for the tourists. This is the most eastern part in the United States. They have an eastern part in the United States, in Guam too as well. And this was named after Stuart Rudolph. He was the director for Interior during the late President John F. Kennedy. So this is a popular place where you see the sunrise and where you see the moon rise. It's extremely popular, and there's a lot of hiking trail in that particular area. But before that, this was a hiding place for runaway slave Maroons in those particular area. And they are a pre-colonial site, a pre-historical site on one of the peninsula out there. And you can see Buck Island. And you look to your right, on my side, you can see Buck Island out there too as well. This is then Christians, they were in the market. You could see what people, they dress in white. And then the Maroon mingle with the folks, they come down because the Maroon have in the Danish West Indies, it's not like Jamaica with much larger island. The Maroon we have here, you call it Maroon. Otherwise, they flee to other islands. So St. Croix was just a holding place because it was a small island and you don't have mountain like 4,000 and 5,000 or 6,000 feet high in the atmosphere. So Maroon in the Danish West Indies, we call Maroon, which they flee from island to island. So they come down the market and they mingle with the marketer and they get goods. So this one in the market in Christiansted. This area still exists today and Stephen in the party's places. It's right in Christiansted. I was there the other day driving through in Christiansted. So this is an old picture of in our history. What I did here, since we're trying to protect the Northwest, so I gave a chronological event in time of the Northwest. Even though there was Maroon here before the 1650s, but because you're working in the Northwest and from documentation that we got gathered, so starting from the 1650, coming right down, so I gave a short story information what took in place with Maroon, coming right down. That's basically what it's down to 1848, when you have emancipation. So this tell you, for example, on 1735, June, Governor Mott, he was the first Danish governor of St. Croix. He also owned a plantation in St. John, Annibalg in St. John. He also owned plantation in St. Thomas too as well. And he stayed right in 1735. Report that fire after runaway slaves are regularly seen in the Northwest Hills. And then he says 1746, large number of Maroon gathered in the north side mountain. Intensification of Maroon activity throughout St. Croix create fear of a general slave revolt. Runaway hunt meet with limited success. And so he got a brief statement that I mentioned, and then also he mentioned about Whale Bay and those particular area, and he mentioned about Puerto Rico. A lot of the folks here, runaway slave, end up in Puerto Rico, Tortola, or other part of the Caribbean. In the beginning of the colonization of the Danish West Indies, the system of slavery was brutal, harsh, barbaric, violent. This was a law. This law started back in September 1733. One of the governor at that particular time, Philip Garland, decree was the basic law whereby enslaved Africans were governed. And the read is four of them here, but it's 19 code that govern the Danish West Indies. I will just read it. I will just read the third one and the fourth one. For example, a Maroon of 8 days shall be pinched with 150 lashes. A Maroon of 12 weeks shall lose his leg, and Maroon of 6 months shall forfeit their life unless the master will pardon them the loss of a leg. Then other one, number 4, he mentioned Platt shall lose a leg, again a Maroon, unless their owner will pardon them. So this was the law. The Danish West Indies side to say had the most brutal law in this part of the world. Even put it in Spanish, and this is in our history, and this is a part of it, of the Danish law at that particular time. In this photo here, when a Maroon went away, they have pictures and it describes the person that ran away. Like today, somebody was in jail and for every reason they get away, either on the internet, either on social media. In those days, they didn't have all the social media and the internet, but they put in the paper. And this basically describing a person, he dark skin, light skin, or how tall he is, which plantation he came from, and who owned this portion. You got to remember at this period in our history, people was owned. So I was trying to get that in the mind of people going to this area. It was property. It had to comprehend, like you own a car or house. But your ancestors at that time was owned by other people. So you got to keep that in the mind. And your owner can do what you want to do with you. This is the example here. A runaway fugitive. A slave who have already made several attempts at escape, bound at the leg by iron chain, or secure at the neck by my iron collar. And you see how the thing around his neck and he have it unchained. Now, these information were written by people who was here, not by me or anyone else who listened to this presentation. This you can find in our history. This is what happened in our history. And I think by understanding our history, we don't have much with our young people killing one another. You have to know your history to understand where we are going. And this exactly happened in our history. And today in our society, we're having our children killing one another because they don't know the history. They don't know what we went through. So this is an example here where he had been born when he went away many times. This is a runaway slave, a woman, when she been caught and being whipped. When they get whipped, the parent get 150 lash or more, and where they, after they get whipped, they put salt and pepper in the wounds. You have to understand, in order to understand this, you have to really meditate, because you try to understand how this could happen. And today it happened in other parts of the world. In the United States, things have not changed. We make a lot of strive, but look at it today in the US. Still got the same type of racial issues that was not. And this is how people went through. This is the other one, the plight of the runaway slave. And I mentioned earlier how they cut off the foot, and this is an example here. This is Moravian. He came here during the 1760s, and he wrote about it. And here he mentioned runaway Negro who remained away for 3 months, they get the foot cut off. And this is a good example or picture here. And the other photo you see, a Danish hunting for runaway slaves, where if you run away, they hunt you. This is the rebellion in St. John. And let me quote, 3 of them were burned at the stake on 3 different plantations on St. John. One was burned to death slowly. Another was sawed in half, and the third impaled. The 2 Negro women had the hand and the head cut off after 5 had been tortured with a hot pin. This happened in St. John. Those that went away, I know you heard about the 733, but this happened to those folks, those people, they came maroon that went away. In fact, St. John in the Western Hemisphere is the first place in the Western Hemisphere that took the freedom for about 6 to 7 months before Haiti or before the United States. And the fort in St. John is still there today in Coral Bay. So these are the ancestors that suffer for freedom. The justice system was no different neither. And this was the case with a guy called William Davis. And you see right there, to read it, William Davis, free Negro, convicted by testimony of witnesses and confessed he cut his own throat. His body was dragged through the street by a horse by one leg, therefore hung on a gallows by a leg, and finally taken and burned at the stake. This happened in Frederiksted. This is William Davis. So the justice system, even the justice system during the Danish time, was not just when it comes to enslave or those who purchased the freedom. Our other verdict here, and this verdict is with a free Negro who was free, convicted by testimony of witness but confessed nothing himself. He was broken on the wheel with the iron, a crowbar, lay alive on the wheel, where he survived for 12 hours. The head was dent. I mean, just to read the whole thing, I mean, is pull chill through your body. This will happen again in the Danish West Indies, and this was the justice system at that particular time. We talk about maroon and hardship. The profile accusation, Marine Maroons. See Frederick Mark, again, the first governor here in St. Croix, and his writing, and he mentioned 7 Maroons had fled St. Croix, seeking to refuge in Puerto Rico. They were presumed drunk or dead. I'm coming right down to where you see Abraham Marco. One of our school today named, what do you call it? One of our school in St. Croix. Clago Marco. Abraham descendants. Abraham, his family came from France. They were escaping persecution from the church, and they fled this part of the wall, and they were going to Martinique, but there was a storm in November, and ended up on the Danish West Indies and established plantation here. His great-great-great-grandson, they schooled him after him. Abraham also is the one who designed our flag, the American flag. But he was a Danish subject. He could not fight in Civil War in the United States. He was a friend of George Washington. And there's a house there that he built in Pennsylvania, still built there. So Abraham is mentioned here. In May, 2 enslaved male and 2 enslaved female belonged to Abraham Marco, ran away to Puerto Rico from the west of St. Croix. So Clagamarco School, the descendants of those 4 going way back. Once upon a time, Clagamarco, his ancestors owned slaves here in the Danish West Indies. And then you have Adams and Creole born in Mount Washington again. These are exactly people that in the record that ran away to Puerto Rico and elsewhere. You can see the names here are enslaved, and then you can see who they belong to. All this again is in our history. You can see Japa belong to. You can see Peter, Hope, Jack. So all these individuals belong to someone, and this is a list of some of those individuals that, you know, escaped, went to Puerto Rico, or they went to the British West Indies. We had folk even went a fight to the United States. During the early development of the Danish West Indies, runaway found refuge in dense tropical forests and caves of the island. However, with the development of agriculture, the protection of that forest began to disappear. The forests were not only used for protection by runaway slaves, but the trees were cut down to escape from the brutal system of the day after day to Puerto Rico and other islands in the Caribbean. In 1706, the Danish passed a law, the council passed a law. The law basically was they cut down the trees for the enslaved will not get to make canoe, to escape. And this drawing here, you see escaped maroon fleeing. And the picture below, you see escaped maroon with children and men in the forest where they're being captured and where the forests are being cut down. So the forest, the mountain, the valleys, the cave, difficult part to get to was the refuge that enslaved throughout the Caribbean and South and Central America and North America. The cost of escaping. Again, this was written by Moravian. And he said, whoever make his way directly to a free Negro of Puerto Rico by means of such escape was taken in by those Negroes thereby becoming similar free. Whoever those who fall in the hands of the guards along the coast acquire the only after they had served their 1 or several years, and then they got the freedom. And they continue in saying that they treated the slave worse than the Spanish counterpart. The Spanish tend to integrate the slave into society. They had a strong belief in the legal rights and spiritual personality of the slave, which transcend his misfortune of slavery. Stated a clerkly priest, slave in Puerto Rico had a right to marriage, raise a family, hold property, and a speedy liberation through either baptism or purchase. Puerto Rico and the Danish West Indies, it intertwined because at the time I'm going detail talking, but I have written 11 articles which I found to Miss Brown, and they're gonna go in detail talking about Puerto Rico and our history. Even today, we have Puerto Rico and Buena Friendship Day. We really started going back from the Native Americans. No right, no justice. This is a German physician, and this is what he said. He summed it up. A Negro slave has no right at all. A white person who has absolutely no connection with him can, without reason, best beat him to death, and the slave does not dare resist him in the least way. The Treaty of 1767 between Denmark and Spain to return runaway slave or maroon back to the Danish West Indies did not help maroon. In other words, the law that was passed, the law that they had was to, if they escaped to Puerto Rico, was to send them back to the Danish West Indies. But the government of Puerto Rico just basically ignored it. So today in Puerto Rico, there are people who live in Puerto Rico descended from St. Christ and as well as from St. Thomas too as well, and Tortola. So we have ancestors in Puerto Rico. In one of my articles, I talk about that, and I mentioned the places in Puerto Rico that people descended from the Danish West Indies over 300 years ago. And when I went to Puerto Rico many times, I went to visit this particular area, and these people still got a history, telling the oral history, talking about how the ancestors get from Santa Cruz or from St. Thomas or St. John or Tortola, how they migrate over there and how they got the freedom, and they still living there in Puerto Rico. This to the end of, because of time, this is a song that sum it up. The song called Before I Will Be a Slave, I Be Buried in My Grave and Go Home to My Lord and Be Free.
Yes.
So you can you have the PowerPoint, so you can pray for them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So let me come out of it. Okay, let me come out of it. Okay. Yeah, it's still there?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So that basically end. I trying to make it fast because of time. So that's the basically end, but there's any question for any of the teachers or students, they can ask. Now, in terms of the Northwest of the area that I'm working on for the past 30 years, is an extremely pretty area. It's going up from 200 feet over to almost 1,000 feet. And next month, like I mentioned earlier, that Ms. Brown is working with some of the teachers. There will be a seminar there where we go to that site, to the grave sites, and where I will get some others individual like probably George Tyson and Jerry. He have family they buried there getting back. In fact, his grandmother, his great-great-grandmother came here when she was 18 years old, and I wrote an article about the history of his family. And you can see the grave of the enslaved folk, and this is the Northwest of the area. So they have an understanding of VI history and the importance of these individuals that play a major part for the freedom, because they fought right down until 1848. And many of the people, like I said, escaped and went over to Puerto Rico. In the northwest of the island, a place called Maroon Ball or Maroon Ridge, the place called Maroon Hole. That was the oral history before these slaves jumped over the cliff. Now, in written history, you have it in St. John. You got Ram's Head and Mary Point. We got exactly written information during the 1733 slave uprising in St. John, where they escape and where they jump over those particular areas. And so while the U.S. was not self-independent yet, and they were fighting for their zone, in this part of the world during the Danish time, there was the enslaved here who fought for their life in this part of the world here. So it's very significant that it is to be protected, and it is a pretty area. You just saw some of the pictures in that particular area, and we have students from all over the world come down here and doing the research from Denmark, from the United States, from Europe, even some students from here in the Virgin Islands. So it's a research facility besides hiking there and seeing some of the grave sites. And we have the endangered species owl. The endangered since the 1800s. There's couples still in that part of the island. That island is totally cut off. You look at a whole different world. You want to know if you're still in St. Croix. You like, when you go there, you can almost feel the spirit of this individual. There's a sugar mill there built in 1796 with a dungeon where they hold enslaved folks. That part of the island used to be sugarcane once upon a time, but the small section where now was one virgin land. And just by being there, you could see the reason why those individuals lived there, because it was very difficult to get there. That is the deepest part of St. Croix from that part of the island, and close go around to about 15,000 feet deep. And I call the deepest part in this part of the world between St. Thomas and Puerto Rico, about 28,000 feet in the Atlantic particular area. And that part, again, is close to Puerto Rico. So that's why it's pretty unique. And the topography of the area is pretty unique. So it's basically untouched. There's a dirt road that go right down. You get a 4-wheel, people go down there and enjoy the pools and the bath and the happy the rare plants in that particular area. There's also a slave road. We were walking on the same road that the individual walked for more than 200 years ago. So you go just walk on a road that the ancestors walk on. So it's very chilling when you be in this area and you read about it and then you be in there and you see it. It's very chilling. It's very quiet. You can hear the ocean, and you could go into some of the caves in that part of the island. That's one of the major areas for fishermen when they come to Wilkes. You still find Wilkes along the area, but just to get to that area alone, it's not an easy route to get to that particular area. There's a couple areas, probably 3 areas to get into the northwest. So that total area there, and why you see the grave set, a lot of the grave have conch shells. They were designed by the conch shell. That's one of the tradition with the enslaved in the Caribbean, where they had a conch shell around the grave. But when those teachers will be saying next month, when you go there, I don't know how to say it, but a chill will go through your body to see people buried there in grave, slave, those who fought to the freedom, and then those who emancipated in 1848. It's a very chilling experience to see the grave them in that area there.